This is
The Science Lens,
the Faculty of Science podcast at the University of Manitoba. Together, let's discover the unknown and invent the future. Hello, I'm your host, Kimia Shadkami, Faculty of Science, Digital Content and Communications Lead, and a proud alum with a Master's in Computer Science. In each episode, we take a closer look at the research, innovation, student experience, and the people who shape the future of science right here at the University of Manitoba. Today, I am joined with our co-host, Michelle Perner-Lemire. Michelle is a research grant facilitator at the Faculty of Science, University of Manitoba. She has a PhD in medical microbiology and infectious disease and has been with the faculty since April 2024. Michelle, could you please introduce today's guest for us?
I'd love to. We have Dr. Houda Elmimouni from the Department of Computer Science. Her work focuses on understanding the human experience in using technology, including in education's public and online settings. Her social science methods that she applies to improve robot and other digital interface designs to enhance the user experience while respecting diverse social human values such as privacy and accessibility. And we have Dr. Abishek Iyer, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Chemistry and a Canada Research Chair Tier 2 in solid-state materials for sustainable energy. His work focuses on inorganic solid-state chemistry to discover new compounds that can become efficient optical or magnetic materials, or compounds that can clean up toxic metals and acidic mine waste. Thank you so much for both of you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.
That was impressive. Great introduction. I want to start with a question that kind of comes to my mind whenever I sit down to write, because I do that a lot in my daily job. And also creative writing, because I sit down and I think most of the people who maybe are not into creative writing think that the idea just strikes you out of nowhere, and then you're sitting down and doing the work. Most of the times is like you have to go out, experience different things, see different things, and then finally you're inspired to take on a new idea. I want to know, what is the process of identifying an idea, choosing it, and then, going after it in your research and in your field? Houda, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So my first background as a child was in theology and arts, and that shaped me in ways I didn't realize at the time. So I questioned what I do and how, why, and why do they matter? So I saw everything as an act of worship not in the narrow sense of the term as in like spiritual actions performed in a particular place of worship, but in the broad sense, where like it could be like eating healthy food, right? So this research is too could be an act of worship. So it's like there should be goodness in the intent, in the process, and also the outcome. So anything that could harm wouldn't be something that I would do. Ideas usually come from my lived realities. There are many, but mine come like little love stories. So I see an idea around, dancing, bouncing, and I probably think it's not important. But then it comes around in different shapes, and I see it in daily life in different contexts, and I start wondering about it, and then it disappears, and I feel kind of I miss it, and then I see it walking by, and I don't know where it's going. But then like I start entertaining it during like multiple times of the day, thinking about it. And then all of a sudden there is like this love fire for it. I start thinking about it nighttime, dreaming about it, and love is blind. So I feel like sometimes obsessed with it, and sometimes I could just like sleep at nighttime thinking about it, and in the morning I know like how to dress it up for a certain paper or a grant, and then it becomes like something that I chase. Although like I felt first like it was chasing me, but then I chase it. So like I would give, for example, telepresence here as telepresence robot. They're machines. They look like an iPad with a broomstick on wheels. But what excites me about it, not the machine itself, but like how like a student can benefit from telepresence robots in the context of the classrooms when, for example, a student is not able to attend in person, right? So that's I see the impact of those telepresence robots, and the process is actually long. So it started first. I saw first telepresence robots when I started my PhD program. It took some time. I saw it in conferences, like where people who cannot get visas, use them, people who have accessibility needs. But then it took time, and I only started studying telepresence robots after the pandemic, when I saw like how I can dress this idea in a certain context and use it. So that's when I started doing research about telepresence robots.
That is so interesting. That is such a nice story for every idea. That is a great approach, to be honest. What about you, Abishek?
Wow. So certainly it's a love story for me as well. Sorry, I'm stealing her words, but some research that I've done is it encompasses the whole periodic table. So I use elements in my research, basically anything that's on the periodic table, we can use it. And a large part of it is sort of defined by everything around us. So this mic has materials that we make, this iPad, that laptop, everything that we use is using aspects of solid state chemistry. That is what we do, right? So when I am looking at designing a particular idea, I'm looking at a problem. So an example would be, let's say I want to make an X-ray detector, right? And so we use X-ray detectors to sort of like in healthcare, in security, in all of these things. And to design an X-ray detector, you need heavy elements. And so that's sort of the starting point that I would look at. And then honestly, if I'm being honest, like we go and look at literature, right? So people in the past have done a lot of interesting work. They may not have had access to things. So then over time, certain things have sort of died down. And then there are a lot of research that happens around the world. So you go and look at literature, you go and attend conferences, you sort of talk to people. And that's sort of the starting point of where we sort of like start to think about things. A large part of my research is understanding chemical designs and then understanding those and modifying those, right? So people have done certain things, but then maybe there is some challenge there. And so we're sort of like looking to address it that way. And that's when we sort of like move towards designing the material itself, right? So we have a whole periodic table. So periodic table has all these elements, so many combinations, so many probabilities, right? So you then narrow it down to, it's like, okay, for this particular application, I need these sort of elements. I look at these combinations. Then that's sort of where the design starts to happen. And then then the next step for us is experimental, right? Mm-hmm. So you go into lab, you try iterative processes. I'm like, okay, I'm going to mix this in this ratio. What do I get? And then sort of as I keep on going, I'm looking at these compounds. And then as I sort of start to understand them, I start to study the structure and property, right? So any material that I make has a structure. That structure then defines the property of the material. Mm-hmm. And so we study that, we look at the property and we're like, okay, this has addressed this particular aspect, but may have this problem. So now an iterative process, a loop sort of goes through and we sort of like continue developing the material. Yeah. Since these are new materials, nobody knows. So I have the power in that sense.
That's exciting.
To sort of knowing that like I am unraveling, like as I go through, as I study these compounds, that this is what it can do. Right. And then once it's out there, there are others who might want to explore these things for other things. Right. So that's sort of like the process that we go through. But yeah, as Houda said, like it's like we are chasing the idea. And then like the idea sort of like comes to us and then we start chasing it. And that's sort of like the whole process. Like at the end of it, for me, it's like the enjoyment of when I look at an experiment happen. That analysis is what sort of like excites me and sort of like, okay, I've thought of something, I've got something out of it, and then I keep on improving it.
So. That sounds so exciting. It's so inspiring.
What is your favorite part of your work? Abishek, why don't you start this time?
So I would say going into lab and trying it, right? Like, so it's favorite in the sense that I get to see what I've thought of, right? Well, I guess to correct that statement, it's like most of the times I get to see what I thought of did not work. But then,
As is science.
But then, no result is a failed result, right? Like you always use it as a step to improve on something, right? So that thing that I thought of might have not been that great to start with, but that result has made it refine that thought, refine that design that I looked at. And that sort of is the process that is the fun part, is the intellectually stimulating part for me, is like, okay, I had this idea, now I have this result. Based on this result, can I improve this idea? And then that process is like really exciting. I would say from a fundamental science perspective. If I want, like, of course, like the happiest part would be that material was designed for this particular application. It actually works. That'll be the best part. But on a day-to-day basis in my research, that's the thing that keeps me going.
And I think failure is such an important part of science because you still learn from it. And you learn yourself better as a scientist. And now you know that information for the next time. So you won't make that if it was a mistake or that same process again, because you know that there's something that was not working about it, but you're still learning something.
In fact, like, as people say in science, usually you're happy to have accidents because you never know what has actually worked out. So probably calling it failure is probably not the best thing.
Harsh.
Right, it's harsh because sometimes it works, right? That's the reality.
It's the process.
Yeah.
And Houda, what is your favorite part of your work?
Yeah, so when technology meets people, so because that's actually the end point, or when I see the impact. So when I see students, for example, rolling in the classroom in a telepresence robot and saying, yay, this is exciting. I really feel it in the classroom. So like, I think that's the moment where I feel like the technology has a certain meaning and my research is meaningful, but also talk about excitement as Abishek, expressed it. So what started in my head as a stubborn little thought and an idea that kept appearing and disappearing, this love story, the back and forth with the ideas. So that keep teasing me first and then appearing and disappearing. So I think I enjoy that back and forth and those like idea dances in my brain. So, and it reminds me that research is not only about finding a certain solution, but it's about being open to discovery and meaning. So like, I think that's what I enjoy most in doing my research.
And seeing certain ideas come to fruition and the joy on people's faces,
right.
Especially kids.
Yes. Yeah.
Those are wonderful. So we sort of talked about, what your process is and what's your favorite part. How has your research changed since you started? Especially that you're both, early career. I want to know, how has things changed so far?
Do you want to go first? No?
Sure. Yeah. So if I had to describe how my research changed, I would like to say that it became more like an olive tree, than an ivy. An ivy grows, quickly, just climbs whatever nearby surface, wall. It is restless, always looking for the next surface. I think I was looking more for chasing technical feasibility, like whatever, technology I found available as a student. So I think that's what shaped my approach. But now it is more like an olive tree. It is more deliberate. I think I found the right soil in the Faculty of Science, if I may say. So it is, I'm trying to deeply root it, hopefully producing fruit. So I would like to give you an example. For example, I was looking at content moderation and in social media, and I was just trying to measure like the bias and spot the bias. But now I am more fascinated by activist circumvention strategies and the ways they try to, overcome for example, censorship. So I think that's how I would like to describe it.
That's a beautiful metaphor. That's really lovely. What about you, Abishek?
So I'd say personally, the thing that has changed for me is that I've realized that in research, you want to be patient. Impatience is probably not the most fruitful thing. Just in my research itself, I would say computational, so machine learning, artificial intelligence has certainly has become a significant part in material science. So when I started my PhD, or even before that, it hadn't come into at least material science. So the idea of trying to make a new compound was you do 500 reactions to get a success of five new compounds. So that's not a very efficient way of working, right? And so at least in modern day, at least as of now, machine learning is sort of the intention is to minimize those 500 reactions that you try to get those 5 compounds, to maybe minimize it to 20 reactions that you might try, right? And so to make that efficient, I'm not saying that we've reached there, but that's sort of the thought process, that there is even an option that exists out there, is something that has been a significant shift. And I think it's great that there are more options, right? And I think that's sort of the biggest change, I would say, that has happened through my course of research.
That is definitely felt in a lot of fields for sure too. Yeah.
Being able to have the luxury of choice and choosing what projects you go delve deeper into is extremely fortunate. So I have a question on what are some of the barriers that you either have already started dealing with or foresee that you'll have to deal with as you bring your science out of the fundamental research into having a real impact on the world. And Abishek, why don't you go first?
Sure. So just from a scientific perspective, doing an experiment in a lab is always at a very small scale, right? So we are doing micrograms, milligrams. So if that doesn't sort of make sense, just a pinch of salt is what we're trying to add when we're trying to make a compound. But if you want it to reach people, you kind of need to make sure that you can scale it up. So scaling up is one of the biggest challenges that I would say from a synthesis perspective exists. And so then I gave you an example that to make an X-ray detector, you need heavy metals, right? Now that heavy metal is doing a great job for an X-ray detector. But if that is to go out to people, they might not really be able to, when we made a new compound, my limitation is that I might be able to predict certain problems with it, but not a lot of problems, right? So which is sort of what my other project is with environmental remediation of metals, is to be able to sort of so you make these materials for this specific application, but what consequence it has in nature, in health, might be quite different. So if it goes into a waste stream, that can have a problem. And so to actually be able to predict all these different problems is something that is quite a challenge. And so if I want my technology to go out to everybody, I need to be able to think of all possible problems and challenges that might exist. And I wouldn't call that as a limitation on my end, because there's only so much expertise I can gain. And that's sort of where the challenge comes in when you want to bring in a technology, right? So you want to try and address as many problems, but you also might not be able to predict all of them. And so one of the ways that we try to look at it is through collaborations, right? You go to other experts and you're like, hey, I want this to go out there. And these are sort of what I can think of. Can you think of something? And so spitballing these ideas, discussing these things really helps in addressing these things. So yes, it's a limitation, but I wouldn't call it so much a limitation. It also makes me go out of my comfort zone and actually reach out to others and sort of use their expertise to sort of get to have this reach as a technology to people out there.
Using it as a bit of an opportunity. In science, we all have our own expertise. So then it's really helpful to be able to go to someone else and then be able to collaborate and have a better scientific project that has more promise.
Yeah.
Yeah, in addition to what Abishek said, because some of it applies to my area too, but since I study the interaction between humans and computers, barriers are not only wires, but worries. Let's say ethical, privacy, consent. So okay, so because I deal with people, like if I want to study like kids and use of technology, then like there are a lot of barriers. Okay, so and that's that makes sense. But there are also like technical, like if I study telepresence robot in the classroom, like imagine there is the student attending class and then the Wi-Fi drops. What would you do? Okay, so like it is like technical, but also like it has an impact on the student. Because they're there to study, not to just deal with those technical issues. But also like thinking about the social aspects, who benefits from this research, etc. So yeah, it is a little bit complicated, but yeah, we just need to deal with it and try to overcome all those barriers.
Yeah.
And as anyone who's ever tried to join a online meeting knows that technical issues always abound, even when you think that you have everything sorted.
So yeah, so when I do the studies, for example, I try, although like they could participate in the study from home, I'd rather they come to campus and participate from the lab. So just in case there is an issue, they just can go in person in the classroom, so they don't miss a lot. So yeah, I think that's we try to
And then you're minimizing their impact
yes,
as well, which
we
is
try to
what
minimize.
you try to do.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think out of all the science communication stories I've read, some of the most interesting ones are where there's collaboration between different disciplines that you would normally not see them together, but then they collaborate and something really, really fantastic happens. I wonder what would be the wildest thing you would like for it to happen to your research if there weren't any barriers? And then what are you doing to kind of, get there now with the barriers in there?
And if money was no object, like you had all the funding you needed or wanted.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the support, everything.
That would be interesting. I think a world where robots are woven into our public spaces, they're quietly present, part of daily life, offering support without demanding attention. So I think that would be an ideal thing. Like, for example, a robot in a library helping people with accessibility needs read a book, or like read a book for people with, vision issues, or host poetry circles. Yeah, that could be ideal. But that's a dream. So robots, not as novelties, but trusted companions that make civic spaces more inclusive. But I think, that's ideal. And that's a dream, as I said. But I do little things that could probably help or contribute to that. Like, for example, studying privacy issues and trying to make telepresence robots more trusted by just adding like a certain flashing button when it's recording. So people know like it's, a transparent design, or it's recording or it's not. Okay, so like these little things that can contribute to that big dream.
Yeah, those count. Those really count, little by little.
Yes.
What about you, Abishek?
Honestly, money is always going to, like, you can throw a lot of money and you still want more money. So I guess that will always be a limitation. I think, like, from a technology perspective, yes, the most important thing is to have clean energy, right? The impact we've seen, right, on climate, on life, on health, everything, right? So the dream is that we have clean energy, cheap materials, and do not ruin like the world we live in, right? That's the dream, right? And I think this is such a big challenge that even if you throw a lot of money at it, you might not be able to solve it immediately. And that's the whole point, right? Like, you want to understand everything step by step anyway. So I think, so as I said in my previous answer, right, like collaboration is probably the best way of going about it, right? So you want to because we don't want to be in our own specific niche and sort of be focused on just that. At the same time, we need to be focused on that as well. But we still need to like go out and reach out to others and sort of take their expertise, take their like suggestions and sort of like improve on things, right? So that's from a technology perspective. As a researcher at a university, the ideal case would be every student enjoys what I do, right? Have as many students do as much of my research so that I can do much more exciting things, right? That'll be the dream. But like, of course, like everybody should explore as much as they want. And yeah, if a student is like coming into research, which is sort of like what I do a lot of, they just like enjoy the process, right? It's a PhD or a master's degree is a long time, and if I can have every student of mine enjoy their PhD, that's a dream for me, for sure. So that's sort of like, those are my wildest dreams. Like, I mean, in my own personal thing, like, I think I'll try my best to give them the best experience. But yeah, you just try it. That's all.
All of them are so wholesome.
A storeroom filled with every element within reason.
Yeah.
That students can go in and just create something. What do you hope for the impact of your research?
And like, you can think of that as the next 5, 10, 20 years.
So for me, certainly, like, next 5 years, I would just want to just improve on these ideas that I have, right? Like, a realistic goal for me would just be that, can I, well, apart from getting tenure, right?
Tenure first. Then.
Tenure first, for sure. Keep getting those grants in. Those are all important. But yeah, like, these ideas that I have sort of like started on, like, at least I sort of like see some sort of a movement in those ideas would probably be the next 5 years. In the next 10 years, like, essentially, like, these ideas become better. I've modified them, I've improved them. I have students coming out of the lab who are sort of like looking at these things, having collaborators who look at the same problem in different directions, sort of like viewing a problem, being able to understand a problem from different directions is something that I'd like to sort of like look at, and like 10 years and beyond, right? Like, it's sort of what I would really want to be able to look at is, I am in research to be able to do interesting things that eventually contribute to the society, right? So any one of the materials that I happen to find ends up going there, might not be in 15 years, might not even be in my lifetime, but maybe even after me, right? Like, if somebody can find use for them, and we keep on working on those things, that'll be great for me. Like, I'm happy with just that.
How about you?
Yeah, so I think I'll go back here to the olive tree and ivy comparison. So yeah, of course, I would like my research to be an olive tree and mature over time, of course. So olive trees, they need care. But once rooted, they give shade, fruit, and even oil that flavors a generation of meals, right? An ivy, and definitely not a poison ivy, because if you touch it, then you regret. It is itchy. Yeah. So when I think about the future, and probably I'm not thinking about the 10-year timeline or this way, but when I'm thinking about the future, I have to say, from my culture, we say, inshallah, because it's scientifically equivalent to the sum of ifs, and in science and research, there is a ton of ifs. If you get this grant, if you get more students, if you get this work accepted somewhere, etc. So there are so many ifs. But I would say, like, probably in 5 years, my tree is still a young tree. It still needs pruning. There is research that you probably need to, just not do research, do more of it. Okay. So yeah. And then, like, in 10 years, I would say the tree is stronger. It is deeply rooted. It provides a deeper shade with a community of students participating and contributing to it, with collaborators from around the world, right? All contributing different perspectives, etc. And in 20 years, probably an olive grove. Okay. So that outlives me. Not, it shouldn't be like one season harvest, like multiple harvests. So I wanted, for example, to create, contribute methods, even mindsets that people can use in their own research in different ways. So I think that's how I see my research going.
A lot about science is learning the process and how to think about it and take it to the next steps, not necessarily what specific area of science you're focused on, but that process and understanding that and getting good at thinking critically about your research or how it can connect to other areas.
Yeah.
You've talked both about students and a longer lasting impact than just yourselves. How do you create that supportive environment for students where they have the opportunity to flourish and grow? Maybe Abishek, you start.
Sure. I mean, for me, I've just been here for a year. So I'm still sort of trying to figure out what best works, right? From my own experience, like from a PhD to postdoc and to coming into as an assistant professor, I've looked at a lot of things that have worked, but you sort of I thought I had understood a lot of these things, but now being on the other side, like when you're actually talking to the students, there's a lot more conversation styles that you need to adapt. And I think that's sort of the process that I'm sort of going through, is how to converse with students and understand, because at the end of the day, I need to make sure that they can appreciate the work that I'm trying to do. Right. And sometimes the hardest part in science is simplifying it to sort of be able to make it accessible to a broader audience. And I think I'm still learning that process of how to communicate, and every conversation is different. When I'm talking to a first year student versus a fourth year student, right, that conversation is very different. And it sort of didn't come intuitively to me. And so as I started talking to these students, I started to realize that I'm talking about, let's say, NMR to first year student. They may not actually have known what an NMR is. And so I'm oh, well, so then now when I'm okay, I might be talking a lot of things that you might not understand. Can you stop me and tell me that, hey, you said a lot of words that I don't understand. Can you simplify that? So to get that feedback is probably the most important thing. And that's another hard thing, is because there is a power dynamic that you sort of as you sort of communicate. And you sort of try your best to minimize that power dynamic to whatever extent you can. And that's the learning process, to be honest, right? And so my approach is I usually invite students to just volunteer in my lab, right? They can anytime come in, volunteer. At this point, I'm certainly very open to, if my door is open, please come in, right? So making myself as accessible as possible to a student, and hearing them out, right? So that's sort of the broader idea as to what I do, what I've been trying to do. And so I've had students who volunteered in my lab, and then I was okay, if you feel comfortable, because yes, my own reason is I want students, but they should also be trying to understand if this works for them. So giving them that freedom that, hey, you know what, you can try this. And they might not necessarily like the research. They might not probably like the research environment. The thought process might be different and all of those things. And so you want to give them that freedom. And that's sort of what I'm trying to sort of incorporate into my interactions with a lot of these students.
A good fit for both parties.
For both parties, exactly. Yeah.
And Houda?
Yeah, I am fan of reflexivity. So it shapes in many ways how I do things. So when I'm thinking about it, I just think about my Mediterranean culture. We're not a pressure cooker, we're a tagine. So in my group, we try to, pressure cooker is quick, but often the meat burns.
Not the same taste.
Not the same taste. A tagine is, cooked slowly. It is layered, right?
The smell.
And the smell.
Heavenly.
Yes, it is layered, and then the spices, the flavors, and everything could deepen over time. So, I use the pressure cooker myself, but when I do it, I make sure that I am the only ingredients there. Because, sometimes you have to, write a paper in a week or so, or a grant or something, but I do my best not to involve students in a pressure cooker style. So, and in the tagine, it's layered. There is the first layer, second layer, and the bottom layer. You make sure that you're not putting someone who would burn, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yes. So, and then there are spices, and those spices are collaborators from around the world that bring different perspectives from different disciplines. So yeah, that's how I try to lead my group. So like everyone learns slowly, internalize those ideas and learn like that way and make meaning out of the research, not just like, oh, we have a paper that we can submit. So yeah, I think that's mainly the way I work with my students.
I am so gonna go home and cook that tonight.
I'm already hungry. Just saying.
Okay, let's move into some rapid fire questions for two of you. We're gonna do one me, one Michelle. Are you
Shall I
ready?
start?
Yes, please.
Coffee or tea while working?
For me, tea.
Tea for me too.
Should we
Rousing
also
success.
should we also answer?
Ooh,
Let's do
yeah.
it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's.
Some of them we might not be, but the ones that we can. I'll do tea.
I am 50-50 on coffee and tea, but I'll say tea, as I've been learning the past few months.
Or have you been peer pressured? With
Yeah.
Probably
I have
because
coffee in
everybody
my
in the
mug,
office.
but I have
tea.
5 different types of tea at my desk. So,
Same here.
That's why I was surprised. 50-50 coffee. I was like,
but
so
I
many
start
different
my
types
day
of
with
tea at your
coffee,
desk.
so I have to give that respect.
That's true. If you could collaborate with any scientist, who would it be?
Oh my God, that's a tough one.
Sorry. We said these are rapid fire questions. We didn't say they were going to be easy.
True.
Like, you mean scientist as in like a person or like?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
You can also choose a field. We're going to make it easier a little.
Honestly, for me, like right now, the place I am in my research, like anyone in computer science, like I'm happy to collaborate with them for sure.
Perfect.
Yeah. But you have to explain to me like the
course.
periodic table and everything. Yeah, I would say someone probably I can collaborate with a variety of people, like even from medical sciences, psychology, philosophy, sociology, I think I collaborate across multiple fields because it's human-computer interaction, and the humans need, all those kind of fields to understand like the human mental model and everything. So yeah, I think I can collaborate across many fields.
Can always incorporate something.
Yes, yeah.
So chemistry is one of the options. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
There's a hope.
There's hope.
Yes.
Data or intuition? What do you feel is more important in your day-to-day?
Intuition to start with, data to like make that intuition work. So
To go the distance.
to go the distance. So yes, I mean, I guess intuition is what gets me going. So I'll put intuition to start with.
I think both. I cannot have just intuition without data and data without intuition. So yeah.
Yeah. It's like computer science for me too.
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat. I know I designed the questions, but I can't pick.
If you weren't a researcher, what would your career be? Ideally.
I love this question.
Artist or designer? Because I like that.
So when I was doing my PhD, on the side, I used to do cricket umpiring. So I'd taken a few exams and everything. So yeah, if I wasn't doing research, I would be a cricket umpire any time of the day. I would love to like go out there and like referee, like umpire, like international games. Like that would be something I'd certainly love to do.
Oh my God, that is
Still
so
a dream.
fun.
Like I'm still going to say like that's not something I've given up on.
Don't, please. They both sound very interesting. Okay, if you could instantly learn one skill outside of science, what would it be?
I'd love to learn to play the guitar. Honestly, I've tried it so many times and I've given up on it because it's hard. But that is something I certainly want to learn. Like a musical instrument for sure.
That's interesting. Houda is thinking still.
I'm still thinking. It's hard. I just don't know what I want to learn.
Sometimes also if you've like just gone out of your way and tried everything, there isn't much that is left.
I'm trying to learn French, and I'm continuously impressed whenever I see your resume and see that you know so many languages, and it gives me inspiration to keep trying.
Yes, I think more languages would be something that I would like to learn. I would like to learn Italian.
Ooh.
That would be fun. This is it. Thank you so much.
All right. Yeah. Thank you both, Houda and Abishek, for sharing your thoughts and your scientific expertise with us today. Your enthusiasm and your insight was really inspiring and wonderful, and we appreciate that you took the time to come and try out this podcast with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm happy that someone wants to listen to me, so I'm happy to talk.
Thank you. No, thank you. Thank you both so much for being here. That's a wrap on episode 1. To our listeners, thank you so much for spending this time with us. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please follow us, give us a review. I also want to thank our multimedia and content specialist, Kimia Shadkami, who is behind the cameras at the moment. Until the next episode, please remember to discover the unknown and invent the future.